All right, you are live, and we are live actually with Real Fridays. Every Friday in the mortgage, housing, and real estate business is Real Fridays, which is an insider's look on the mortgage business, on housing and real estate, with myself, Rick Rock, and Brock Cassidy, the uh, the famous Maynard, the most famous Maynard of all time, and and then Jeremy Potter, who's on Detroit time, but he should be joining on here any minute. We were supposed to start at 12:30, but we decided to move it for Jeremy to accommodate his schedule, and yet he is still 2 minutes late. So I know, what do we do with that? I mean, I don't even know necessarily. Like, what do you do when people are late for meetings on your side? Um, I, I have an
how long do you I usually send them a message like 1 or 2 minutes after. I'm like, does this time still work? Something like that. And then I don't know, stay on for 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
In our case, we'll keep going because we have at least a quorum, but that is always tough with meetings. And unfortunately, I get it wrong a lot lately with being double booked on things and with travel, where I'm the one showing up late. But I try to at least give notice.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because when I was on the leadership team at Calix, I used to get almost pretty ballsy about it, because you'd set meetings up with these brokers, mini cores, some of them are larger lenders, and they would just totally blow you off, And in sales, you know how hard it is in sales, where you build, internal expectations, you're building a pipeline, you have a meeting, and then someone just blows you off just because they didn't have the courtesy to let you know that they weren't going to show up.
Yeah.
And I used to I don't do this anymore, but I used to say, okay, Brock, you missed our last meeting last time. I'm glad we're able to connect today. But before we get into what we were going to talk about, why did you miss the meeting? And it almost to levy kind of an uncomfortable pause, and then to say, I prioritize my day to commit to this time with you. I just expect the same courtesy, because this is a relationship. We want to support you in very intimate, very, very direct ways.
Yeah.
And if this is the way a relationship starts, it doesn't necessarily. If I was late, wouldn't you look at me a little differently from a vendor standpoint?
And it's like so easy. It's like anything else, like social media versus real world. Like, it's like anything else, where I think remote culture and Zoom meetings and email, like, it's like made it all seem like acceptable to not respond with urgency and to not show up for things and whatever. And even a few years, even pre-COVID, it was totally insane to miss a meeting. I thought, that culture has kind of changed. People are a lot more flippant about it these days, it seems like. Jeremy will give an excuse too, because he did say he was going to be running until 1 at least, but.
Yeah, I'm sure he's just carrying over. Boy, what a crazy week. Obviously, I know I posted about this, and of course Greg Scherer posted about it yesterday, about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It has nothing to do with housing policy, but what's interesting is, and I made my post yesterday around how do you talk to employees, and how do you talk to even vendors about things about tragedy, or how things or things that impact people. They might impact a portion of the people, it might impact an entire company, but how do you talk about things that aren't native to the company? It's clearly from the outside, but it becomes the elephant in the room that's occupying everyone's mind, their water cooler conversations. And it was an interesting, it's an interesting moment to kind of think about how different sort of you could not say market events, but different civic events that occur just in culture, that impact people and employees. And how do you do that? How do you, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting.
No easy answer. Yeah. I mean, you gotta just. There's probably very, very different approaches to talking about it a lot, to asking people to keep it out of the workplace. I don't know.
Yeah. No, welcome, Jeremy. Appreciate you joining us. This is great. We have a full quorum here.
What's up, guys?
You've missed a 4-minute discussion about being late and a 2-minute discussion about politics in the workplace. So you're right on time.
Woo! I'm glad I missed it. Glad to be
here. Exactly. Did you get a new microphone? Your audio is like perfectly clear. It's really good.
Rocking and rolling, but maybe it's just the energy in my voice. I don't use a microphone for this typically, although I could try it if you guys want me to.
Oh wow, no, your audio is really, really clear today. Brock, your audio is always echoey. It does look like, it sounds like you're in a closet every time. We probably need to get you a good mic. And how do I sound?
I mean, half the time I can't even hear you guys because you're in a car. So, you know, if we wanna dig up everything, but I actually have a microphone and I never use it because I find I run into more issues.
So Jeremy and I were wondering last week exactly how Brock Cassidy starts his morning. Do you start it reading the newspaper, maybe smoking a cigarette, having a glass of coffee or a cup of coffee, or how does Brock Cassidy start your morning? Is it on the terrace or a balcony overseeing like the Boston skyline? Like, what is it, a moment of just silence, quiet? Are you listening to sort of some classical music in the background? Like, paint us that picture.
Yeah, paint us a picture, Brock.
Interesting questions. I think it usually starts with me sleeping a little bit later than I want to, but not so late that I miss anything, notably. And then 50-50 on going to the gym in my building or for a little walk and coffee. No terrace. Although no paper. No, I try to stay out of the mainstream media. I get caught up every Friday at 12:30 Eastern by YouTube, and at night, and at about midnight when Jeremy sends me political memes. So that's plenty.
I bet.
Yeah, I did like a big mainstream media, or just really all media detox the last couple of years. I have gone out of my way not to read like the newspaper, quote unquote. Just didn't, stick to things that are applicable to my life. I know people have strong feelings about that either way. So don't do that. Lots of coffee, lots of water. And then I don't eat until, I kind of do like accidental, sometimes on purpose, intermittent fasting where I don't eat until about 1 p.m. I just
Wow.
ate the first time 5 minutes before this call.
Well, that I would have expected nothing short of a thorough answer from you. So I appreciate you going through.
Yeah.
Both the diet as well as your aversion to
black cold brew until about 1, eat around 1. And that's the switch over.
I honestly think one of my favorite outlets for news, quite honestly, is Vermont Public Radio. I love public radio. I think it's great.
I do like local news when I'm in Maine. Yeah, I get charged over that. Yeah, I haven't gotten into the Boston news yet though.
Yeah, the Boston Globe is terrible. So
not one of our sponsors, I guess.
Yeah, not one of our sponsors. So we're the Burlington Free Press is, but not the Boston Globe. But no, it is interesting. The post I made a couple of days ago, Jeremy, was on like how do you talk about difficult things in the workplace, where things outside the workplace end up impacting employees. It may not impact all the employees. It might impact a segment of the employee population. But how do you talk to those things? Along the political side of things, it's always easier. Like in an election, half your company's happy and the other half is really upset, right? So how do you lead people through, difficult elections, difficult occurrences? People who have strong feelings about what happened with Charlie Kirk and his murder. It's like it's an interesting conversation around how do you lead, because ultimately people are people.
I think it's almost weirder than that. I think it's like everyone. I remember every workplace I've been at that when some big event like that happens, let's just say it's an election. 50% of people are happy, 50% of people are unhappy. Keep it simple. Both 50% assume they're in the 100%, or close to it, in the 90% maybe. I don't know. I mean, without getting too far into it, Rocket did a lot of Trump fundraisers in my office the first time around, right? You remember that, Potter? Like that was an interesting feeling for people working at Rocket Mortgage at the time.
I mean, I think that experience was one where I think Rocket does a pretty decent job of just explaining, whether they are forced to explain reactively or choose to explain proactively. And really that's true for every organization. It is, the explanations were generally basically on it. Like they were, hey, look,
parties,
this is what we're doing. If you guys care, here's where our PAC money goes. If you don't care,
I don't think they did a bad job of it, but that was a good experience for me as like a 25-year-old to have a huge Trump president fundraiser in my office
or nearby. I agree. I think to Rick's point, that underscores probably the basic principle, which is don't try to get outside of yourself as a leader. If you didn't mention current events for 2 years, don't start with this.
Today is not the day.
Like that's the kind of thing. I think leaders who pick and choose tend to get picked apart by their team. Leaders who are
my style has always been to just not. It's not. It doesn't.
And some people's is to get involved, and some people's isn't. So to your point, Brock, like you wouldn't start getting involved all of a sudden if that's not your authentic style all the time.
Right.
And I think that's probably the best thing. I do think, by and large, people respond to authenticity even if they disagree with you. If you're consistent and authentic, even if they disagree with you, they understand you. And at least as far as personal relationships in the office go, it's probably the best you can do, honestly. And then, earn as much trust as you can, explain as much as you can, and that's it, man. I don't
think, because this, I was reflecting on this around, my reflection started on 9/11, right? I was at a business meeting with Seagate Technology in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we actually had a trade office. We actually had an office in I didn't know the people we lost, but we lost employees that had some office space in the building. So they immediately sort of made an announcement over the intercom. And we were one of America's largest employers at the time. We had 115,000, 120,000 employees. But they made an announcement basically saying, hey, if you need to go home, feel free to go home, be with your loved ones. The second plane hit the World Trade Center. And I'm in Minnesota. And my first reaction was like, kind of what happens in New York happens in New York. Like, I don't get it, right? Because the news was still happening, right? It was the magnitude of what had happened really hadn't hit everybody, but it hadn't really hit me. But it was almost the same thing with the attack October 7th or whatever it was in Israel. It was kind of like, obviously it was rattling to a lot of our Jewish friends and bankers, and for those of us it didn't impact, it was easy to kind of go on as business as usual, where for to some part of the population, life kind of stood still, right? And so the question is that from a leadership standpoint is, because you can go overboard and over empathize, and kind of to your point, Jeremy, like if it's not part of your authentic self to actually sort of try to manage those waters, like it's going to be dicey to kind of pick and choose when to do that, unless that's your modus operandi to do that. But when you're leading people, like on a micro level, someone gets divorced on your team, that's impacting them and their productivity, right? And you could ignore it. Or, I had a loan officer whose mother died. He was super close to his mother. His productivity went down. And of course, sales leadership was like, what the heck's going on with this guy? He's not doing any credit pulls. He hasn't submitted any files. What's going on? And I had to be like, well, look, before coming to judgment, we should fire this guy. Why don't you ask better questions? Mm-hmm. Like, what is going on with this individual? Is there something, right? This is abnormal. Like, what's going on? Rather than threatening to fire this guy. And then when I give him context, the leader either has to humbly say like, oh, shoot, I kind of fucked up here. I apologize. Yeah, let's give him some space. Or they end up digging in and be like, well, that doesn't matter. I mean, you still got to go to work. You still got to work. You still got things to do, and it just becomes this kind of culturally defining moment for leadership to determine exactly how to respond to employees and their respective needs,
Yeah, I do. I agree. I think that's what makes leadership super interesting. I think it's also what makes us study leadership so closely, because I don't know that there's a ton of really good principles, but you're right. Each answer is going to be by the culture of that company and the leader and the people involved. And I think that's what makes it so fascinating. I think you're right. The more local, personal it is, the more flexibility you're going to have, right? And a great example would be like, everybody wants there to be like, we're all treated equally types of things. But in those moments, somebody might not go home and somebody might go home. And you got to figure out a way to make both of those okay. Not forever, but in the moment, you got to kind of support those to the best of your ability as a leader. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of case by case stuff when it gets super scary and personal. So I think that's what makes leadership so hard. And I think it's what makes it so interesting as well.
Yeah. And we don't have to beat this with a dead horse, but I do. What's interesting about leadership is just focus. Part of leadership is helping people focus at the task at hand, right? And when there are things internal to the company, those are easier to manage because you control those factors internally. But when there are things outside of the organization that impact the employees internally, it becomes an entirely different calculus as far as how to handle that, you know. I don't know. It's just an interesting. It's an interesting because either, you know, some leaders are really good at being able to do that, and others just simply are not. They're sort of tone deaf to it, which makes them less approachable, or might negatively impact productivity in ways that could be avoidable, you know.
Agreed.
But no, it's an interesting week. You know, obviously, all of our feeds are dominated right now. Even on LinkedIn, I was actually kind of surprised seeing that LinkedIn's just becoming more and more political, which I'm not really. I try to really avoid quote unquote politics on LinkedIn, in as much I'm always trying to link. Like if I post something about my kids, it's gonna be something that reminded me about leadership. If I post something about Charlie Kirk, it's gonna be something about like how to manage employees when they're affected by outside factors. Like I'm always trying to link it to something housing related or something leadership related, rather than just making some political rant about this or that. Because I just think it's really unhelpful.
I just get nervous for other people. I like get nervous on their behalf, because just as we were talking about leaders picking and choosing, there are tragedies every day. There are tragedies every day in every city that affect every family. And we tend to pick ones, I guess, where the person was like more known by more people than others. But I don't understand why that would be the way to go, because there were horrible things happening in every city. And then when we escalate one, it becomes the story, or it becomes the assumption that everybody makes about who you are and what you think. And I love people sharing their beliefs, and I love engaging in conversation. As you both know, I love engaging in conversation where people are sharing their thoughts and beliefs on every topic under the sun. It's just people skip over 7 tragedies and pick one. My thought is always like, why that one? Like, why all of a sudden? And I don't, like I said, I don't judge. I just wonder. And I worry that, like, you know, by picking that one, you change the conversation around maybe what you were intending. So I don't know how else to say it. That just is I was just surprised. There's so much to do. There's so many.
You raise a good point on fairness for sure. You know, I was like when the Minnesota lawmakers were killed, I think 2 were attacked, one died, or maybe 2 died. But it's like that. I lived in Minnesota for 10 years, so that sort of impacted me more directly as it relates to people that I knew in Minnesota. But obviously, it didn't impact a lot of people, other than just being another headline tragedy that you see on the news. Any other tragedy that you might see, you know, in LA or Chicago or in Kansas. You know, I don't live in Kansas and I have no connections in LA. So it's like, okay, you know, so it is kind of from a leadership standpoint, it's like you either lead people into that place of empathy to kind of say like, look, you know, it didn't impact you. However, this is important. This is why. Right. And it probably could have been an opportunity which I'm not surprised by the current administration. Right. But it's like, that this wouldn't have been where flags wouldn't have been lowered half staff around the country in honor of those legislators who were killed. The question is like, these types of things happen, and we'd be lowering the flag all the time, and so then that's where you get people picking and choosing, and that becomes a really dicey way of going about it.
Yeah, in some ways we've gotten pretty comfortable, and I think maybe politics for all time is like, hey, I won the election, so like my subjective agenda is the one, so you're only going to hear about the shit I care about because I won. And that's the nature of winning elections. So I think there's a bit of that, and I'm aware and sensitive of that for sure. I think what you're saying also, though, is we tend to pick and choose empathy too, which is super weird. It's one thing to pick and choose which things you're going to highlight and which things you're going to lower flags for. I'm actually going a step further and being like, why does it also follow that we're picking and choosing when empathy attaches and why? That to me is that was the hardest part of the week for me, was I'm going to tell you as a leader, not of a political party. I'm just saying leader, big picture of a company, of a country, of a political party, of a media brand, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you when to feel empathetic, and you should feel empathetic here and not here. And here's why. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, that to me is substantially different than picking and choosing when to post about something. They're related, but it's like all of a sudden it's like, you're not supposed to be empathetic until now. Now you're supposed to be empathetic. Now stop being empathetic. It's like, the fuck are you? That's not leading at all. Thank you very much. To Brock's point, I'm going to disconnect and make my own decisions. I don't need you in my feed telling me when I'm supposed to be empathetic. I'll figure it out. Thank you.
I agree with. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what the hell?
So what's
we're trying to figure it out ourselves. We're just
evidently trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the headlines. The first thing we talk about often in the show is just headlines that are sort of dominating the mortgage conversation. And obviously rates have gone down considerably. There's been a kind of a mark-to-market write-down of jobs, up to almost 1 million jobs, and I think that the Fed hasn't met yet, but they will. I suspect that they're going to do a 50 basis point cut as opposed to a 25 basis point cut, just to try to get ahead of it. And I actually predicted this a couple months ago, that they were going to do 50 versus 25. So I think I was somewhat so I think I was somewhat ahead of the curve on that, but it's like the rate conversation is pretty dramatic, and I haven't looked at our pipeline, but I'm curious if you've heard of, or if you've a lot of us have been preparing for expanded pipelines for refinances and just on the fence borrowers who are waiting for rates to go down, and they've gone down quite a bit. I mean, FHA is sub 6% now, so that's going to be a pretty interesting fourth quarter. Depending upon what the Feds do here in about a week.
Well, I think we're going to see rates in the 5s consistently, as a result, and so that should allow for some. I think I'm already hearing rate locks are up and pipelines are full. I think the question is like what everybody was asking was like, will that actually cause people to list their house? I know we have a ton of pre-approvals. I know we'll do some refis of anybody who was above 6 in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
However many that is. I've heard different estimates, 1.8 million, 2.2 million people available in above 6 that might refi down. And then the real question is like, does it open up a chain of moving? And I don't know yet that we've seen any evidence one way or the other on that. But definitely rate locks are up, pipelines are full, and then the question is like, is it enough business to carry through the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's obviously these mini refi booms happened the same time last year for what it was the joke, like the 12-day refi boom or something like that, 14-day refi boom, something like that. This has already gone on a little bit longer. We've hit. Not all of NewZip's company came from the mortgage industry. In fact, most came from like tech startup backgrounds. So I try to spend a lot of time explaining the trends that affect our business. And one of the ones that's really hard to explain is how rates dropping actually kind of slows down consumer direct purchase business because the attention pivots to refi for a minute or for a while. So we've had a number of like record months in a row, and this month we may not, because partly seasonality, partly some of our LOs pivoting to refi that usually feed us a lot of purchase business. So that's been like a fun trend to explain of like, yeah, there's more purchase when rates drop, but not as much more purchase. The proportion of purchase goes down. But I was looking at purchase application data itself, and it's up like 7-8%. It's not gone crazy.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of different cuts of it and a lot of different ways people share it. But if we just look at the weekly purchase index here, it's like, it's kind of like still much lower than it's been in the boom times of the last, post-COVID boom, during COVID boom, but also, up a little bit. I think it's up something like 7 to 10% from this time last year. So that's meaningful, but not changing pipelines super dramatically. And then, obviously refi is much more of a change, from that 500 level of this index to the 1,000 level of this index. It's, the seasonal adjusted amount of refi has doubled from a few months ago. So I don't know. It also, as we've talked about 50 times on the show, application data doesn't mean necessarily a lot. It's a leading indicator. It means people are interested. I'm sure, Rick, you probably hear a lot about the pipelines being focused on, a lot of people are not quite in the money on their refis. There's a lot of calls that are like almost, that's what I've heard from the LOs I talk to anyway. That's still 70-80% of their calls with clients are like, it's not quite time for you to refi. It's close.
Well, and I would say that was true as of last week. I would say this week that those conversations have changed pretty dramatically. And NFM has a pretty aggressive and very proactive AI tool that helps unearth, just run in the background, refinance opportunities and by how much, given margins and current rates. And then also automatic communications to consumers on purchase opportunities, where if there's a specific monthly target, monthly purchase price or monthly payment target, that they automatically say, hey, if you apply now, lock now at this rate, given these margins, like, you can qualify. So it's
the actionable thing we've been doing with that makes a lot of sense, Rick. Along the same lines, the actionable thing we've been doing with all our partners is showing them all the purchase deals that are on hold, where they pre-approved the client, we matched it with a realtor, they went out, they hit a certain milestone in our funnel, mostly like they got matched with a realtor and started seeing homes and then paused their search, kind of being the main one. That we have hundreds and hundreds of those clients with some of our partners that we've had for the last year or two. And so we're doing a lot of like reactivation campaign outreach for purchase as well. And obviously for refi, that's like the whole playbook of like, refi is the really easy to trigger, but purchase you can kind of trigger too. There's more inventory now, rates are lower. Let's check back in with our client, realtor, and loan officer team.
So what would you say to be like is production the distraction? You know what I mean? Does production just continue to prolong change? Or do you think that because it does feel kind of different. It feels like AI has changed the conversation, because typically production's always been what has been, the friction to technology and innovation. But it seems like AI's changed that to kind of say, like, look, guys, there's a panic for people feeling as though they're behind the curve, and they're trying to adopt anything that could give them some kind of AI advantage, almost regardless of the rate trend. Like, what's your take on that, Jeremy?
My take is that they are not serious about adopting AI in a real way. They are looking for a Band-Aid that has the name AI on it to knock out two things with one, which is to be able to say that they're moving forward with AI, which accomplishes some really good internal and external talking points. And then two, to just like incrementally ease a little pain. To really fundamentally implement AI is too hard for most people because their POS, LOS, CRM, and closing partners dominate their tech priorities. So you can only really do things around the edges of those platforms. Otherwise, you're subject to whether Total Expert implemented it, whether Encompass implemented it, whether Blend implemented it. And if those three implement it, then you get it. But most people are captive to that. So the AI they're really looking for is like something little. Do you have anything that can direct some inbound? Do you have anything that can direct tasks a little bit better on top of my existing technology? But I don't consider those to be particularly savings, really.
Yeah. That's exactly the conversation I've heard in a lot of ways, Jeremy. I did our friend, one of our number one supporters of our show, Louis at ArchMI, hosted an executive roundtable in Boston, or suburbs of Boston that I attended a couple of days ago. Mostly CEOs and presidents of lenders locally or like regional RVPs, and there was a lot of discussion about. Well, we use Encompass. Do any of you use their new AI feature? And some yeses. We switched to Blue Sage because their AI feature is better, and that got a lot of interest. And of course, the Penny Mac discussion about investing in and switching to Vesta was an interesting topic of conversation. Hopefully, our friend Mike Yu will come on here sometime soon.
Oh, we need to get him back on for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, it is interesting how you're kind of still, in a lot of ways, in the short term, not in the long term necessarily, but in the short term, you're still like an order taker from your existing tech stack. What AI did they release?
Yep.
That's interesting. I'm going to email Mike again right now, because we do need to have him on the phone. I remember a bunch of those of us that were sort of in the top 20 from a retail origination standpoint got together for a dinner with Mike. This must have been 2 years ago. I was in the leadership over at Cross Country, and we all toasted at the beginning of the meeting. And this is Mike had just raised his money, had just started organizing his plan, and we all toasted to an Encompass killer. We all just toasted at the beginning of the call to basically say, like, look, that's Encompass is just anchored in 2010 territory, and we just don't like having so much consolidated control over our lives, and we want to Encompass killer. And it's kind of interesting to see. But to me, that's just a reflection of the sentiment, both with ICE as well as with Encompass.
And 4 years later, none of those organizations have switched, right?
Well, that's 100% correct.
Right. I applaud the attitude, but yeah.
I mean, at least 10 years,
Yeah.
But you're 100% right. I mean, technology is an interesting thing to complain about, because we always want better technology and we want better features and functionality. But when it comes to actually making the change and sort of jumping the hurdles that are in the way of change, that's where people fall short.
Yeah. Another interesting part of the conversation with Lou and all the kind of regional bank leaders that I was at this week was they were talking about that switch, what it would mean. They're like, yeah, I think I think you can do it in 6 months, 4 to 6 months, 6 months, 6 to 12, some months, 4 to 6, whatever. But then the conversation immediately pivoted to like, well, right now would not be the time to do that because the pipeline's growing and this and that, and refi is coming back, and we launched a new non-QM product. Totally reasonable. So then the conversation quickly pivoted to like, you're trying to pick on a calendar the right 6 months to block off to change. That's a really, really difficult way to adopt tech, is to look forward and say, in 2026, Q2 and Q3, I don't think we'll be that busy. So let's circle that for when we switch from off Encompass or something. But I did find the mindset eye-opening of just like, you have to table it when you think you're busy with other things, even though you totally want to do it. And it wasn't explicitly about all of them switching to Vesta, but it was a good example.
Yeah. Jerry, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that largely there was pushback that I was surprised to hear about the quote unquote Encompass takeover that you mentioned. Like, there was pushback to say Encompass is fine. I was surprised. I don't know where that, like how that kind of developed. But that's kind of where I developed my theory that I've mentioned on here before. And actually, Mike, I think, takes some exception to it. So we should definitely bring him on and ask him about it. But I think a lot of people are like, I'm actually not going to fight Encompass. I'm just going to make it smaller. And instead of killing it, so to speak, as you said, I'm just going to like put stuff around it. So it'll be my system of record for regulatory compliance, but everything else on top of it will be my tech or my data analytics or my processes. And so I think that is one way that ICE pushed back slightly or maintained a foothold. And then I think just, I don't know, there are better people to comment on this than me, but I think ICE can cut other deals in and around the LOS or with other technology pieces of your stack that make it even harder to leave. So I'm not weighing in on like who wins an ultimate LOS battle. I just think the way we use the tool has to change, and it isn't changing very quickly. And so as a result, a lot of people are stuck. And I think if you have your proprietary tech, you're in a whole different camp, and it makes for two industries. Whether you have control or not, whether you're subject to your main systems. And I think that's going to dictate a lot of budgets and outcomes over the next 4 to 5 years, maybe even less, 3 years.
Sure.
And so I don't think that necessarily helps anybody to hear unless you're in a direct seat that can make that decision strategically about your technology. But I think either way, people are scrambling to give you solutions, and it'll be incremental. Good luck. That's like exactly what it is.
I mean, a lot of creativity can exist within constraints, right? Like that's like one of the exercises that people do for creative thinking is like, what if all you have is this box? What can you do with it? So, to some extent, some interesting stuff can come of those conversations too.
Do you think that, what was I going to say? There was some insightful comment and I lost it. Never mind. There was something, it was about, I don't know. I got distracted with I was going to say something to respond, and then you mentioned it. You mentioned something, Brock, and then I got lost in the process. I think I got it. It was, do you think AI will be the great separator from non-depository to banking, or does AI present an opportunity for banks to catch up from a depository standpoint?
When you say catch up, do you mean in origination volume?
Yeah, origination volume, market share. Just because the rule of thumb is that banks are. I mean, look, banks have always been known as the refinance machines. When markets turn to purchase business dominantly, bank market share, it's an accordion. It just sort of runs flat. And then when refinances sort of come back, bank volume goes up, market share goes up. Bless you. But do you think that do you think AI has an opportunity to be a great separator where non-depositories really sprint ahead from an origination standpoint, or do you think it's an opportunity for banks to level up?
I think banks are choosing not to level up, meaning they're picking their origination volume and they control whether or not they want it. They have balance sheets. They have access to the consumer's data and the consumer in many, many, many cases. It's a choice about how much mortgage volume they want to do at the strategic level of the bank's C-suite goals, share price, blah, blah, blah. So it's not going to be AI. If they wanted to, they could just take that. If Chase wanted to, Chase could cut Rocket in half tomorrow. They don't need to or want to. They're happy. The status quo is working for the top 10. I think
the mortgage origination isn't their priority,
right,
at the moment. That can change maybe, but
it could. Yeah, and if
the other thing I heard, Rick, on that point, although this is more about credit unions than banks, but depositories at least. A credit union chief lending officer. This is information maybe a couple months outdated now. But but said that they, the NCUA, like the governing body of federal credit unions, had said 100% bar none, your data cannot touch AI, just as like a short term, like as like a executive order type of whatever function that would be. Don't quote me on the details of that, but I just thought that was like a funny first take of just like, don't let any of your data touch any AI. And some of them had us put in writing. I mean, NewZip has a bunch of credit union clients put in writing that, we can, any AI we use, we can turn off for them, and we can, and we built it that way. But it's a kind of wild way to think about it. Just ban all touching of AI to your data.
What else? What else do you guys think is relevant? Do you think is important for people to be thinking about as we close out this week? And fourth quarter is coming around. We have 2 more weeks before the fourth quarter, and then it's kind of the hard sprint. I mean, fourth quarter is a weird quarter because of Thanksgiving and Christmas, and so you lose about a solid 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks of the fourth quarter to holidays, kind of winding up and winding down. What do you guys think?
Conference season. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is the time of year for me, my life gets a lot less like transactional of like the busiest months in the business. And then you get busy working, on the business. All the big partnerships we've launched over the years have mostly been sourced in Q4, mostly during conferences. So this is like where I really hit that. And I know you guys do too, maybe for different reasons, but conference circuit.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering about that recently. Is like, what are people trying to learn? Like, is there something between now and November 1st at these mortgage conferences that like I'm going there to figure out? And if so, like, what would that be? Or is it just
go in the comments? Yeah, like a streamer.
Not miss something. I don't know. What am I super interested in? I mean, the 2 things I'm thinking most about, Rick, are not the 2 things most people in listening are thinking about, because they're a little tangential to mortgage. But I still believe, and I still maintain, that we're going to see some IPO of some small percentage of shares of Fannie and Freddie by the end of the year. I still think we're going to see 5 to 10% get sold. That doesn't mean the end of conservatorship, because conservatorship is going to hang out until there's enough capital raise and enough percentage to justify exit. So a lot of people conflate these two. I am not saying the end of conservatorship. What I'm saying is nothing's going to change in conservatorship. We're still going to IPO some shares. That is going to have an impact. I don't know what the impact is. I'm watching it, but I do believe it's going to happen by the end of the year. And then we're going to do a couple of tranches. We're going to do a couple more tranches, and then the end of conservatorship will come before the end of the term. And then second, HUD. Is HUD going to do anything around housing production? Is HUD going to truly fund, finance, or push housing production in innovative ways like manufactured and modular in a way that opens up opportunities for mortgage that weren't there before? I think the answer could be yes, but I think they're still trying to figure it out. And the HUD Innovation Showcase was this past week. That's where they bring in modular and manufactured units and put them on the Capitol Mall and let the general public and elected officials and policymakers walk through them. That is a really effective showcase. It is working. Takes a while. We all know change takes a while, but I think I'm watching HUD on supply and Fannie and Freddie on privatization.
Yeah, the Fannie, Freddie, and privatization is interesting. I mean, I know Bob just published his reservations on merging Fannie and Freddie, and so it'll be interesting to see. CHLA just met at the White House a couple days ago.
Sorry, I got to jump, guys. I'm running a call starting right now, but good chat with you. I'll see you both next week.
See you, Brock. See you on Sunday.
Yeah, bro. So in fact, in this Sunday, you're actually going to, you're going to the Mortgage Collaborative. I know we're going to hang out and have some drinks with Brock on Tuesday night, right? Are you going to be able to do that?
I'm leaving Tuesday morning for Blueprint. So I'm going to be at Blueprint. I'm going to be at TMC and then Blueprint. So I'm not able to probably be there Tuesday. I'll be there Sunday, Monday. So
got it. Maybe Monday night. You want to get together Monday night?
Are you in town? Sure.
I mean, I can. I live an hour away, hour and 15.
Sounds good. Well, I will be in touch. I hope you have a good weekend, and look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Let's do it, my brother. Talk to you soon, man.
Bye, guys.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.